Hey everyone, welcome back to the Everyday English Podcast. I'm Lily, and I'm absolutely thrilled you're here with me today. If you've been following along with our show, you already know that we're all about helping you speak English with confidence and authenticity in your daily life. Today's episode is going to be something really special because we're diving deep into something that transformed my own English speaking journey. We're talking about the most powerful, most useful, and honestly, the most practical phrases that native English speakers use every single day without even thinking about them. Now, here's something I've learned after years of studying English and talking with thousands of people who are learning this language. Most of us spend way too much time studying grammar rules and memorizing complicated sentence structures. But let me ask you something. Do native speakers actually sit around constructing elaborate sentences in their heads? Not really. What they actually do is use these beautiful, simple, and incredibly effective phrases that just flow naturally in conversation. These are the real tools of fluent English. So what we're going to do today is explore dozens of these phrases together, break them down, understand exactly when and how to use them, and then practice them until they feel like a natural part of your own English vocabulary. By the end of this episode, you're going to have a toolkit that's going to make your English sound so much more natural and authentic. You're going to feel confident jumping into conversations at work, hanging out with friends, or even meeting someone completely new. Before we jump into everything, I'd love to give a quick shout out to all of you who listen every single week. Seriously, your support means everything to me. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to this podcast so you get all of our latest episodes delivered right to you automatically. And if this episode helps you, it would mean so much if you could leave a review or share it with someone who's working on their English. All right, let's get into it. Let's start by understanding why these everyday phrases are so incredibly important for your English fluency. Think about the last real conversation you had. Maybe it was with a friend, a coworker, or a family member. How many long, complex sentences did you use? Probably not many, right? Most of our actual communication, the real conversations that happen throughout our day, they're made up of these short, snappy, incredibly useful phrases that we don't really think about. We just say them automatically. The reason this matters so much for English learners is because these phrases are the foundation of sounding like a native speaker. When you can use these properly and naturally, suddenly you're no longer translating in your head. You're no longer hesitating and searching for the right words. You can actually respond in the moment, which is what real communication is all about. It's about being present, being authentic, and connecting with the people you're talking to. Now, what I love about these everyday phrases is that they work in almost every situation. Whether you're at a coffee shop, in a boardroom, at home with family, or even chatting with strangers at the bus stop, these are the phrases that bridge the gap between feeling like you're learning a language and actually feeling like you're speaking a language. Does that make sense? So let's start with something we all do every single day, saying hello and opening conversations with people. This is where so many interactions begin, so getting this right is really important. When it comes to greetings, a lot of English students learn hi and hello, which are absolutely fine. But if you want to sound more natural and more like the people you're chatting with, there are so many other ways to open a conversation. Let me give you some of my personal favorites that I use all the time. First, there's hey there, which is warm and friendly without being too casual. I use this one constantly when I'm greeting colleagues or friends. Then there's what's up. Now, this might sound really casual, and it is, but it's also incredibly common in everyday English. When someone says, what's up, they're not always expecting a detailed answer about what's literally happening in your life. Sometimes it's just a greeting, a way of saying, I see you, let's connect. You could respond with, not much, how about you? Or, oh, just the usual, and that's perfectly fine. Another one I love is, how's your day going? This one is perfect because it opens the door for a genuine conversation. It shows real interest in how the other person is doing. If you say this to someone, you're telling them that you care about their experience. Try this phrase tomorrow with a coworker or a friend and notice how it changes the tone of your interaction. And here's one that's great when you haven't seen someone for a while: long time no see. This phrase has a bit of playfulness to it. It reminds me of someone saying, "Look who finally showed up," in a warm, teasing way. It's a fantastic way to reconnect with people you haven't spoken to in ages. Let me give you some real-world context here. Imagine you're walking into your office on a Monday morning. You see your colleague Sarah at the coffee machine. Instead of just saying hello, you could say, "Hey Sarah, how's your Monday going?" Immediately, you've created a more natural, more human interaction. You're not just going through the motions, you're actually connecting. Now let's talk about something that happens constantly in everyday life, but is often overlooked: small talk. Small talk is those light conversations we have when we're not discussing anything super important, but we're connecting over something in the moment. Maybe it's about the weather. Maybe it's about a shared experience. Or maybe it's just about what happened recently. Small talk is how humans build rapport, and it's a skill that's absolutely worth developing. Some phrases that work beautifully for small talk include, "Did you catch the game last night?" if you're talking to someone about sports. Or there's the classic, "How was your weekend?" This one is perfect because almost everyone has a weekend experience to share. You could follow this up with specific questions like, "Do anything fun?" or "Rest up a bit." These little follow-ups show that you're genuinely interested and not just going through the motions. Another great small talk starter is, "Busy day today, right?" or "Looks like it's been hectic around here." These phrases acknowledge the shared experience of your environment. If you're both in a busy office or a crowded store, commenting on that shared reality creates an instant connection. It's like saying, "I see what's happening here, and I'm in it with you." Then there's the weather, which might sound boring, but it's actually a goldmine for small talk. "Nice weather today, isn't it?" Or "It's freezing out there." Or "Have you seen how humid it is?" These are simple, but they open doors. And here's the thing about weather comments: they're universal. Everyone experiences weather, so everyone can relate. One of my favorite small talk phrases is, "How did you end up here?" or "How long have you worked here?" These questions show curiosity about someone's story. People generally love talking about themselves and their experiences. So when you ask questions like these, you're giving them the gift of being heard. That's actually one of the most valuable things we can do in any conversation. All right, so someone asks you how you're doing. You can say, "I'm fine, thank you," right? That's what a lot of English learners are taught. But between you and me, that sounds a little bit like a robot. Real people say things like, "Pretty good, thanks for asking," or "I'm doing well, how about you?" Or here's one I use all the time: "Can't complain, things are going pretty well, actually." Then there's the honest one: "I've been better, if I'm being real with you." This is perfect when you've had a rough day or week. It's honest, it's real, and it actually invites deeper conversation if the other person wants to go there. Sometimes people will say this, and the response is just, "Yeah, I get it," which shows empathy. Other times they might ask, "What's going on?" and you can share if you want to. Here's something I think is really beautiful about English: the variety of ways we can answer a simple question. It keeps conversations feeling fresh and authentic. If someone asks you how you're doing and you respond with exactly the same phrase every single time, the conversation starts feeling robotic. But if you mix it up, if you say, "I'm doing great, actually got promoted at work," or "Not too bad, just really tired today," suddenly you're a real person having a real conversation. One phrase I absolutely love that shows a lot of maturity is, "I'm hanging in there." This one acknowledges that maybe things aren't perfect, but you're managing. You're staying positive, you're persevering. It's honest without being negative. It shows resilience. And honestly, in today's world, I think a lot of people relate to that feeling. Now let's talk about something that comes up constantly in conversations, expressing agreement. When someone says something you agree with, there are so many more interesting ways to show that agreement than just saying yes. Let me walk you through some of my favorites. First, there's exactly, which is short, powerful, and shows that you're really tracking with what the other person is saying. It's like saying, yes, you got it right, and I'm completely on the same page as you. Then there's that's so true, which is slightly warmer and more conversational. If someone says, I really hate Monday mornings, you could respond with, that's so true. I'm definitely not a morning person. You're not just agreeing, you're agreeing and adding a bit of your own personality to the conversation. There's also, I totally agree with you, which is clear and direct. It removes any ambiguity. You're firmly saying, yes, I'm with you on this one. Here's one that's a bit more sophisticated. You're absolutely right about that. This phrase acknowledges not just that you agree, but that the other person has made a particularly good point. It shows respect for their thinking. And then there's the casual, comfortable, yeah, totally. This is the one you use with friends when they're saying something obvious that you both know is true. Now, let me give you context. You're at lunch with a colleague. They say, the new coffee machine is actually pretty amazing compared to the old one. You could respond with, totally, the quality is night and day. You've just affirmed their observation, added a specific example, and kept the conversation light and friendly. That's good conversational English. But here's the thing, we don't always agree with what people say, and that's okay. What's important is knowing how to disagree respectfully and thoughtfully. This is where a lot of English learners struggle because they either sound too aggressive or too wishy-washy. Let me show you how to find the balance. First, there's, I see your point, but I think. This phrase acknowledges what the other person said, shows respect for their perspective, and then gently introduces your different view. For example, if someone says, I think we should always stay at the office until everything is done, you could respond with, I see your point, but I think we also need to protect our personal time to stay energized. You're not saying they're wrong. You're saying, I understand where you're coming from, and here's another way to look at it. Then there's, that's an interesting perspective, but have you considered? This one is great when you think someone might not have thought something through completely. It's curious rather than confrontational. It invites the other person to think deeper. Another good one is, I get where you're coming from, however. The word however is beautiful because it signals that you're about to offer a different viewpoint, and it's not aggressive, it's just different. Here's one that's really useful in professional settings. I respect your opinion, but I have to disagree. This is direct, it's clear, and it's respectful. You're not attacking the person, you're just not aligning with their view. And then there's the more casual, I'm not sure I agree with you on that one, honestly. The word honestly adds a bit of vulnerability. You're being real about your disagreement. The key with all of these is that you're disagreeing with the idea, not with the person. You're maintaining respect for them while expressing that you see things differently. That's the kind of communication that strengthens relationships rather than damaging them. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about something we all need to do regularly, asking for help. Now, as a language learner, this is actually one of the most important phrases you'll ever use because, let's be honest, you're going to need help. Maybe you're in a new country, maybe you're learning something new at work, maybe you're just lost. And knowing how to ask for help in a way that feels natural and respectful is absolutely invaluable. Instead of just blurting out, help me, which sounds abrupt and a little rude, try, could you give me a hand with this? This is warm, it's collaborative, and it assumes the other person might be willing to help. There's also, do you mind helping me with this? Which is polite and gives people the option to say no if they're busy. Both of these work beautifully. Now here's one that's perfect when you're not even sure if the other person will know the answer. Would you happen to know where the bathroom is? The phrase, would you happen to know, is less demanding than just asking, where's the bathroom? It's humble, it's respectful, and it acknowledges that they might not have the answer. And honestly, people respond so much better to that phrasing. I remember when I first moved to a new city, I was constantly asking for help. I'd say things like, "Hi, excuse me, would you happen to know where the nearest subway station is?" The politeness in that phrasing opened so many doors. People actually wanted to help me. They'd not only answer my question, they'd often give me additional tips or directions. That's the power of asking well. Then there's, "Can I ask you a quick question?" This one is brilliant because it's asking for permission to ask for help. It shows respect for the other person's time. And quick implies that you're not going to take up much of their time, which most people appreciate. Follow this up with your actual question and you're golden. Once someone helps you, the next step is showing gratitude. Now, obviously, we all know thank you, but there are so many richer, more expressive ways to show appreciation that really make people feel good about having helped you. Let me share some of my favorites. There's thanks a lot, which is just a slightly warmer way of saying thank you. It acknowledges that the help mattered. Then there's I really appreciate it, which goes a step further. You're not just saying thank you, you're saying that you actually value what they did. Here's one that's really beautiful. That means a lot to me. This phrase connects the help to your emotional well-being. It says, what you did didn't just solve a problem, it made me feel supported and cared for. And then there's, I couldn't have done it without you. This acknowledges that their help was truly necessary. You're not just being polite, you're being honest about how much their contribution mattered. When someone thanks you, you have options too. Instead of just saying you're welcome, which is fine but a little formal, try no problem at all. Or here's one I love, anytime, happy to help. This one tells the person that you didn't mind helping and that they can ask again if they need something. It opens the door for future connection. Then there's glad I could help, which is warm and genuine. It suggests that helping them actually made you feel good. And here's a phrase that's interesting because it acknowledges the gratitude without making a big deal out of it. Don't worry about it. This works when someone's thanking you profusely for something relatively small. You're essentially saying, really, it wasn't a big deal, and I was happy to do it anyway. One of the things I've learned about English conversations is that they need to end gracefully. You can't just suddenly disappear in the middle of a chat, and you shouldn't just say goodbye abruptly without any warmth. So let me share some beautiful ways to wrap up conversations. There's, I'd better get going, which politely signals that you need to leave but doesn't make it sound urgent or rude. You're essentially saying, this has been great, but I do need to move on to other things. Then there's, it was great talking to you, which is warm and leaves a positive impression. Even if it was a short conversation, this phrase makes the other person feel like the interaction mattered. You could also say, let's catch up soon, which not only ends the conversation politely, but also opens the door for future connection. It suggests that you value this person and want to maintain the relationship. Here's one for more formal situations. I appreciate your time, which acknowledges that time is precious and that you're grateful they spent some of it with you. And then there's the casual, friendly, talk to you later, or I'll let you go now, which is especially nice because it acknowledges that they might have other things they need to do. One of my absolute favorite ways to end a conversation is, thanks for the chat, really made my day better. This is specific, it's warm, and it tells the person that their conversation actually improved your mood or your day. Most people really respond to that. I've used this phrase, and it often leads to the other person saying something like, really, that means so much to hear that, and suddenly there's even more connection. Now, let's talk about making plans with people. In our social lives and our work lives, we're constantly trying to get together with people, set meetings, or organize something fun. And the language we use to do that can either feel really natural or really stiff. Let me show you how to make it feel natural. First, there's "wanna grab a coffee sometime?" This is casual, friendly, and super approachable. It suggests something low pressure and enjoyable. Then there's "let's hang out soon," which is perfect for friends. It's informal, it's warm, and it leaves the door open for flexibility. You're not locked into a specific plan, you're expressing interest in spending time together. Another one I like is "we should catch up," which works especially well when you haven't seen someone in a while. It suggests that there's probably a lot to talk about and that reconnecting would be valuable. In more professional settings, you might say, "let's touch base tomorrow," or "we should sync up about the project." The word sync is really commonly used in business English now, and it just means to get on the same page or share information. Then there's the straightforward, "do you want to meet up this weekend?" This is clear, direct, and works for both personal and semi-formal situations. Here's one that's a little more thoughtful. "I'd love to take you out to dinner when things calm down." This phrase acknowledges that both of you are probably busy right now, but you're expressing a genuine desire to spend time together. It shows consideration for their schedule while being honest about your own. And then there's the simple but effective, "Are you free Thursday evening?" This is straightforward. It doesn't assume anything about their availability, and it opens up the possibility of a specific plan. Follow this up with, "if so, we could," or "I was thinking we could," and you're building momentum towards something concrete. All right, let's move into something that's really important in daily conversations, expressing opinions. We all have thoughts, perspectives, and beliefs, and in English, there are so many nuanced ways to share those opinions without sounding like you're trying to force your views on someone else. Let me walk you through some of my favorite ways to do this. The most basic one is "in my opinion," which is straightforward and direct. You're clearly staking your claim. You're saying, "this is what I think," but in a respectful way. Then there's "if you ask me," which is a little more casual and inviting. It's like saying, "well, if you want to know what I think." It invites the other person to consider your perspective without demanding that they agree. Another one I love is "personally, I feel that," which adds a personal, emotional dimension to your opinion. You're not just thinking something, you're feeling it. That's a different kind of weight. Here's one that's really useful. "From my perspective," which acknowledges that you're speaking from your specific viewpoint and that other people might have different perspectives. It's humble and sophisticated at the same time. Then there's "to be honest with you," which adds vulnerability and authenticity. You're saying, "I'm going to be real with you about what I think." People trust that kind of honesty. And here's one I use all the time. "I think," followed by a pause, like, "I think we should focus more on solutions than on problems." That pause gives your thought weight. It suggests you've actually considered what you're about to say. It makes your opinion sound more thoughtful and less like you're just randomly throwing out ideas. The beautiful thing about all of these variations is that they allow you to express yourself while still respecting that other people might see things differently. You're not saying, "this is the absolute truth." You're saying, "this is how I see it," which is much more likely to lead to actual dialogue rather than confrontation. Now let's talk about expressing surprise and excitement. These emotional responses are huge in real conversations because they show that you're present, you're engaged, and you care about what's being said. When someone shares exciting news, your response matters. There's "no way, that's incredible," which is energetic and shows genuine excitement. There's also "you're joking, right?" which expresses disbelief in a playful way. And "I can't believe it," which shows shock and wonder. Then there's the classic "that's amazing," which is warm and supportive. But if you want to be more specific, you could say, "that's so exciting, I'm so happy for you." This takes the amazement and connects it to genuine care for the other person's happiness. I use this one a lot because it feels authentic. There's also "how cool is that?" which is casual and enthusiastic. It's the kind of thing you'd say to a friend when they tell you something unexpected or fun. Here's one that shows genuine surprise. Wow, I honestly didn't see that coming. This phrase acknowledges that what they said was surprising, and it validates their experience by suggesting that they accomplished something unexpected or uncommon. Then there's, "That's the best news I've heard all week," which connects their news to your own emotional state. You're saying that what happened to them is genuinely important to you. And sometimes the simplest expression is the most powerful. Just "wow" with genuine feeling behind it says everything. Or "really?" with surprise in your voice. These short expressions are actually super powerful when they're genuine. The key is making sure your tone matches your words. If you say, "That's amazing," but you sound bored, the message gets confused. But if you say, "That's amazing," with real energy and interest, it lands beautifully. Let's shift to offering help and support. This is something that comes up all the time because people are constantly facing challenges, juggling projects, or dealing with difficult situations. Being able to offer support in a way that's genuine and helpful is really valuable. There's, "Do you need a hand with that?" which is casual and friendly. There's also, "Let me know if you need anything," which is an open-ended offer of support. You're saying, "My doors are open if things get tough." Then there's, "I'm here for you," which goes beyond just practical help. This phrase acknowledges emotional support. You're saying, "If you're struggling, I've got your back." And "I've got your back," speaking of that, is a great phrase. It's loyal, it's committed, and it says, "I'm going to support you through this." There's also, "You can count on me," which is a promise of reliability. You're telling someone that you're dependable. Here's one that's really practical. "Let me take care of that for you." This is offering to shoulder some of someone's burden. Maybe they're overwhelmed, maybe they're sick, maybe they're just stretched too thin. This phrase says, "Let me help lighten your load." Then there's, "Can I help you with the chopping?" or insert whatever task, which is specific and practical. You're not just offering vague support, you're offering concrete help. One more that I think is beautiful is, "Don't worry, I'll handle it." This phrase is especially useful when someone is stressed. It reassures them and removes the burden from their shoulders. You're essentially saying, "Stop worrying about this. It's taken care of now." That can be so relieving for someone who's overwhelmed. The key with all of these support phrases is to follow through. If you say, "Let me know if you need anything," be prepared to actually help when they reach out. If you say, "I've got your back," show up for that person when things get hard. Words are only powerful if they're backed up by action. All right, let's talk about something that's never fun but always necessary: dealing with mistakes and apologies. Everyone messes up. Everyone says something they shouldn't, forgets something important, or just plain makes an error. The way you handle that mistake is what defines your character and your relationships. And in English, there are so many ways to take responsibility and apologize sincerely. The most basic is, "I'm sorry," which is fine, but sometimes we want to add more weight to it. There's, "I'm really sorry about that," which shows that you're genuinely remorseful and that what happened mattered to you. Then there's, "I didn't mean to," which acknowledges that it was unintentional. This is important because it shows you're not the kind of person who would deliberately hurt or disappoint someone. Here's one that shows real responsibility. "That was my fault." This is direct, it's honest, and it removes any ambiguity about who's responsible. Then there's, "I apologize for the mistake," which is more formal but still genuine. You might hear this in professional settings. And here's one that promises change. "It won't happen again." This phrase reassures the other person that you've learned from your mistake. One of my favorite apology phrases because it shows vulnerability is, "I messed up and I'm sorry." The word "messed up" is casual, it's honest, and it doesn't make excuses. You're just owning what you did wrong. Then there's, "I feel terrible about this," which connects your mistake to your emotional state. You're saying, "This doesn't sit right with me, and I want to make it better." And here's a really sophisticated way to apologize. "I understand how that must have made you feel, and I'm truly sorry." This shows empathy. You're not just apologizing for your action, you're acknowledging the impact that action had on the other person. That's the kind of apology that actually heals relationships. A quick note, sometimes just saying, "I was wrong," is the most powerful apology of all. It's simple, it's humble, and it's undeniably honest. Now, let's talk about something that can feel really difficult, but is also really important: saying no and declining invitations politely. None of us want to hurt people's feelings, but we also can't say yes to everything. The art is in declining while maintaining warmth and respect. So let's talk about how to do that beautifully. First, there's "I'd love to, but I can't," which is honest and warm. You're saying, "I genuinely want to do this, but I have a legitimate reason I can't." Then there's "Thanks for the invite, but I'm swamped right now." You're thanking them for including you, which shows you value them, and you're explaining your limitation. Another good one is "maybe another time," which leaves the door open. You're not closing the relationship, you're just pushing the timeline out. You're essentially saying, "not now, but possibly later." Here's one that's more explanation-focused. "I'd really like to, but I already have plans." This is straightforward, it's honest, and it provides context. People understand that sometimes we have prior commitments. Then there's "I really appreciate you asking, but I'm not going to be able to make it." This is warm, it's respectful, and it acknowledges that their invitation was thoughtful. One of my favorite ways to decline is "I can't make it this time, but next time I'm definitely in." This shows that you do want to participate. You just can't do it right now. It also expresses anticipation for future involvement. And here's one for when you absolutely can't do something. "I wish I could, but it's just not possible right now." You're expressing genuine desire to help or participate while being honest about your limitations. The key with all of these is to be brief, be honest, and be warm. Don't over-apologize, don't make excuses that aren't true, and don't make it seem like you don't care about the person or their invitation. You're just honoring your own boundaries, which is actually a sign of good self-care and respect. Let's explore something that happens constantly in conversations: confirming that you understand what someone is saying. Sometimes you hear something and you want to make sure you're on the same page as the other person. There are some beautiful phrases for this. First, there's "got it," which is short and clear. You're saying, "I understood what you just said." Then there's "that makes sense," which goes a step further. You're not just understanding the words, you're understanding the logic or the reasoning behind what they said. "I see what you mean" is another great one. This acknowledges that you've not just heard the words, but that you've grasped the deeper meaning or intention. There's also "exactly," which we touched on earlier, but it works great for confirmation too. You're saying, "Yes, that's exactly right," and "I'm with you" is really casual and friendly. It's like saying, "I'm following your logic and I'm on the same page." Then there's "crystal clear," which suggests that whatever was said has been understood perfectly. There's no confusion, no ambiguity. You could also say, "I hear you," which acknowledges that you're listening and that you understand. And here's one that's more thoughtful. "So what you're saying is," followed by your interpretation. You're checking your understanding by reflecting back what you heard. This last one is super important because it's a way of saying, "I heard what you said and I want to make sure I got it right." It protects against miscommunication and it shows that you're taking the conversation seriously. If you interpret it incorrectly, the other person can correct you. If you got it right, they'll confirm, and you both move forward with shared understanding. Now let's talk about encouragement and motivation. Sometimes people in our lives are going through challenges, facing new experiences, or just need a little boost. Being able to encourage someone in a way that's genuine and uplifting is a real gift. There's "you've got this," which is energetic and confident. You're telling someone that you believe they have the capability to handle whatever they're facing. Then there's "I believe in you," which is more personal and emotional. You're not just saying they can do it, you're expressing faith in them as a person. There's also, "You're stronger than you think," which is a bit more reflective. It's suggesting that they might not realize their own strength, but you can see it. And "Don't give up" is straightforward and powerful. It's a reminder to keep going when things get hard. Here's one that shows you're in this with them. "We're going to figure this out together." This removes the burden of handling it alone. You're offering partnership and support. Then there's "You're doing amazing," which is affirmation in the present moment. You're not saying you'll do well in the future. You're saying you're already doing well right now. There's also "I'm so proud of you," which is beautiful. It connects achievement to emotional value. And here's one that's really useful when someone is facing something new. "Just be yourself, and it'll all work out." This reassurance is often exactly what people need when they're nervous about a new situation. You're telling them that their authentic self is enough. One more that I love: "One step at a time, you've got this," which acknowledges that things might feel overwhelming, but taking it piece by piece makes it manageable. These encouragement phrases are wonderful to use with friends, with family, with colleagues, and honestly, they're great to say to yourself too. When I'm facing something challenging, I'll literally say to myself, "You've got this, Lily," and it actually helps. It's not silly, it's nurturing yourself, and that's important. Let's move into asking for clarification or repeating something. In real conversations, people speak at different speeds. Sometimes there's background noise. Sometimes our minds are elsewhere. Not catching everything someone says is totally normal and totally okay. There are polite, natural ways to ask them to repeat or clarify. First, there's "I didn't catch that," which is honest and straightforward. It doesn't blame anyone. It just states that the information didn't register. Then there's "Could you say that again, please?" which is polite and clear. There's also "Sorry, I didn't quite catch that." The word "quite" here suggests you heard some of it, but not all of it. Then there's "Would you mind repeating that?" which gives the other person agency. You're asking permission, which is respectful. And "Do you mind speaking a bit slower? I want to make sure I catch everything," is specific and helpful. You're explaining why you're asking. Here's one that's useful when you want the other person to explain more, rather than just repeat, "Could you explain what you mean by that?" or "How do you mean?" Both of these are asking for clarification rather than just a repeat. Then there's "Sorry, what was that?" which is casual and works in most situations. And "I'm not sure I understood. Could you rephrase that?" suggests that maybe the way it was said didn't click for you, but if they said it differently, it might. One more that I think shows intellectual curiosity is, "I'm interested in understanding that better. Could you elaborate?" This shows that you care about really getting what someone is trying to communicate. It's not just about catching the words. It's about understanding the meaning and the context. That kind of careful listening actually builds really strong connections. Let's talk about making requests politely. In all kinds of situations, we need things from people. At restaurants, at work, at home, asking for help, asking for something tangible, it's all about how we ask that determines how people respond. Instead of just saying, "I want coffee," try, "I'd like a coffee, please." It's a small change, but it's way more polite. Then there's "Could I please have," which is even more formal. You might use this in professional settings or when you're asking for something significant. There's also "Would it be possible to," followed by your request. This is really thoughtful because it acknowledges that what you're asking for might not be easy or might require something from the other person. "I was wondering if you could help me" is another beautiful one. The phrase "I was wondering" is soft and humble. It's asking rather than demanding. Then there's "Could you do me a favor?" which is straightforward and friendly. Here's one that's especially useful in professional settings. "I'd appreciate it if you could." This phrase connects the request to how you'd feel about it being fulfilled. And "Would you mind if I" is great when you're asking permission for something. Then there's the casual "Can I ask you something?" which is an opening. The actual request follows, but this phrase softens it by asking permission first. One more that shows consideration. I don't want to be a bother, but would it be possible to? This acknowledges that you're asking for something, and it shows that you understand it might inconvenience the other person. That kind of awareness usually results in people being happy to help because they feel seen and appreciated. The key with all of these is adding words like please and thank you, which we sometimes skip when we're in a hurry, but those little words make such a difference in how a request lands. Now, let's explore conversation fillers. These are the small words and phrases we use naturally when we're thinking or when we want to give ourselves time to formulate our thoughts. Some people are uncomfortable with these because they think they sound wrong, but actually, using some conversational fillers makes you sound more natural, not less. There's well, which is such a common opener. Well, I think, or, well, it depends. You're giving yourself a moment to gather your thoughts. Then there's you know, which is incredibly common in spoken English. You know, I've been thinking about that. Sounds natural and conversational. There's also I mean, which allows you to clarify or adjust what you just said. I mean, it wasn't a bad movie, it just wasn't what I expected. And let me think gives you permission to pause. It's a signal that you're processing, and most people are fine with that. Here's one that's very useful, actually, which often introduces a different perspective or additional information. I thought so too, actually, until I learned more about it. There's also to be honest, which we touched on earlier, but it's definitely a conversational filler too. It signals authenticity. And so like is super casual. So like, we were just talking about going somewhere, and you continue from there. One more that's interesting is what I'm trying to say is, which acknowledges that you might not have expressed something clearly the first time, but you're going to try again. This is a beautiful phrase because it shows self-awareness and a desire to communicate better. Now, a note of caution. These fillers are wonderful, but like anything, they can be overdone. If you're saying like every other word, it stops sounding natural and starts sounding like you're avoiding clarity. The goal is to use them naturally and conversationally, not constantly. Let's talk about compliments and appreciation. In our busy lives, we often forget to tell people how much we appreciate them or to notice and celebrate the things they do well. But when you give someone a genuine compliment, it can literally make their day better. There's that looks great on you, which is perfect for fashion or appearance-related compliments. Then there's you did an amazing job on that, which is specific and affirming. You're not just saying they're good, you're saying they did something well. Here's one that shows you've been paying attention. I really admire your creativity. This is deeper than just a surface compliment. You're commenting on a quality or characteristic that you've observed. Then there's you're really good at this, which is straightforward and encouraging. And I love how you handled that situation. Connects their actions to a positive outcome. You're affirming not just what they did, but how they did it. You've been so thoughtful lately is a beautiful one because it acknowledges a pattern of behavior. You're saying, I've noticed that you've been consistently kind or considerate, and that's a great idea, affirms their thinking or creativity. Here's one that's personal and warm. You make me laugh, or you always know how to make me smile. These connect their actions to the positive emotions you feel. One more that I love, thank you for being there for me, which isn't exactly a compliment about something they did, but it is appreciation for who they are in your life. And here's one that's specific and thoughtful. I appreciate your honesty, or I appreciate how you always listen. You're complimenting a specific quality or behavior. The key with compliments is being specific and genuine. A vague compliment can sometimes feel empty, but a specific, thoughtful compliment, that stays with people. That actually impacts them. Let's explore the world of managing and confirming plans. Once you've decided to get together with someone, you need to confirm the details. And the language for this is really straightforward and practical. There's sounds good, which is agreement and enthusiasm. Sounds good, I'll be there at 5. Then there's let's lock that in, which sounds like you're making it official. You're moving from tentative to committed. Perfect, I'll put it in my calendar. Shows that you're treating the plan seriously and that you're going to follow through. There's also I'll mark it down, which is similar. You're acknowledging the plan and putting it somewhere you won't forget. Then there's looking forward to it, which expresses genuine excitement. It's warm and positive. And I'll see you then is clear and simple. You're confirming the when and expressing that you'll be there. Here's one that works when you need flexibility. Let's figure out the details later. You're confirming the basic plan, but acknowledging that some details might need to be worked out. And what time were you thinking is a great question to ask when nailing down specifics. Then there's I've got Friday evening open. Does that work? Which is offering specific availability. You're making it easier by suggesting a concrete option. One more that shows you're taking things seriously. I'll definitely be there, I promise. The word definitely and I promise show commitment. And if plans change, you'd say something like, something came up, can we reschedule? Which is honest and respectful. Following through on plans and confirming them properly is huge for building trust with people. When you say you're going to be somewhere and you show up, people know they can count on you. That's valuable. Now let's talk about casual goodbyes and how to end conversations naturally. We touched on some of this earlier, but there are so many natural ways to say goodbye that don't feel formal or stiff. There's catch you later, which is casual and friendly. It's perfect for colleagues or friends, and it implies you'll see them again. Then there's talk soon, which is warm and suggests you'll be in touch. There's also see you around, which is relaxed and open-ended. Have a good one is probably my most used casual goodbye. It's friendly, it's brief, and it works in almost any situation. Then there's take care, which suggests you care about their well-being. There's also have a great day, which is warm and positive. And safe travels works when someone's going somewhere. You're expressing care for their safety. Here's one that's fun. See you tomorrow, or catch you on the flip side, which is a bit playful. And talk to you later is straightforward and works in most situations. One more that's thoughtful is, thanks for the chat, really brightened my day, which we touched on earlier, but it's such a beautiful goodbye because it's specific and appreciative. Then there's the texting version, which might be abbreviated, like TTG for talk to you later, or TTYL, or even just L8R. But in spoken conversation, the full phrases are better because they're warmer and clearer. And if you want to be more formal, you'd say something like, it was lovely speaking with you, or I'll talk to you soon, which works in professional settings. The key is that all of these are warm and leave a positive impression. They're not abrupt. They honor the interaction that just happened. Let's shift to talking about shopping, ordering, and transactions. These interactions happen all the time, and being able to navigate them smoothly in English is really practical. At a restaurant, instead of just pointing and grunting, try, I'll have the grilled salmon, please, which is clear and polite. Or, could I get the chicken sandwich, which is friendly and direct. Then there's, what do you recommend, which opens up a conversation and might lead to a wonderful discovery. At a store, you might say, I'm just browsing, thanks, if someone asks if you need help. Or, if you do need help, do you have this in a different size? Or, could you check if you have this in stock? Then there's the straightforward, how much is this? Or, what's the price on this? Which are basic but necessary. I'll take this one, please, is clear and ready to move forward with a purchase. Here's one that's useful when trying something on. Do you have a fitting room? Or, can I try this on? And if you're looking for a specific item, where would I find the shoes? Or, do you carry that brand? Are helpful questions. When paying, you might say, what's the total? Or, how much do I owe you? And, would you take cash or card? Is asking about payment methods, though usually that's displayed. One more that's useful, could I return this if I change my mind? Which shows you're considering a purchase but want to know the return policy. And, is this on sale? Is asking about pricing. All of these are straightforward, practical, and they work. The key is being polite, being clear, and respecting that the people helping you are also having a day and appreciate kindness. Let's explore expressing your needs and wants. Throughout daily life, we have different needs and desires. Knowing how to express those in a way that's clear and respectful is important. Instead of saying, "I want a coffee," you could say, "I'd like a coffee," or "Could I please have a coffee?" Both are more polite. Then there's "I'm hungry," which is straightforward, or "I could really go for some food right now," which is more casual and friendly. "I need some advice" is honest and opens up the possibility of conversation. There's also "I could use your help with something," which acknowledges that you have a limitation and that the other person might be able to help. And "I'm looking for," followed by whatever it is a way of expressing a want or need in a conversational way. Then there's "Would it be possible to get?" which adds politeness and consideration. Here's one that's more emotional. "I'm struggling with this, and I could use some support," which is vulnerable but honest. And "I need some space right now" is expressing a need for boundaries. It's something that requires courage to say, but it's important. Then there's "Can we make this work?" which is expressing a desire or a need while opening up negotiation. And "I'm not comfortable with that" is expressing a boundary about something you need or don't need. One more that's useful: "I prefer," followed by your preference. "I prefer not to talk about this," or "I prefer working in quiet," or "I prefer coffee to tea." This is expressing a need or desire in a way that's about you, not demanding of others. The beautiful thing about all of these phrases is that they allow you to express yourself clearly while remaining respectful of others. You're being honest about what you need without being demanding or aggressive. Now let's talk about discussing routines and daily habits. When you meet people, whether it's new colleagues or new friends, one of the ways you connect is by talking about what you do and how you spend your time. "I usually wake up at 6 in the morning" is sharing a routine. "Most days I take the bus to work" is sharing how you get around. Then there's "In my free time, I love reading," which shares an interest. And "Every Saturday I visit my family," which shares a regular commitment. "I'm a morning person" is expressing a preference about your routine. There's also "I try to exercise 3 times a week," which is a goal you're working toward. And "I'm not a huge fan of mornings," which is expressing how you feel about a particular part of your day. Then there's "I usually work from home on Wednesdays," which shares work arrangements. And "I've gotten into cooking lately," which shares a new interest or hobby. Here's one that opens up conversation. "What's your typical day like?" which invites someone else to share their routine. And "Do you have any hobbies?" which is asking about how they spend their free time. Then there's "I've been trying to sleep more," which is sharing a goal or a challenge you're facing. And "I've gotten really into yoga," which shares something you've developed a passion for. The beautiful thing about these routine-sharing conversations is that they help people understand who you are. They create connection through shared experiences or interest. If someone says, "I love hiking," and you say, "Oh, me too. I usually go on weekends," suddenly you've found common ground. You've created the possibility of future connection. So don't underestimate the power of sharing about your daily life and your routines. Let's move into talking about future plans and what's ahead. These conversations are really common because we're constantly planning. Instead of just saying, "I will," try variations like, "I'm going to go to the gym after work," which sounds more natural. Or, "I'm planning to take a vacation next month," which is clear about your intentions. There's also, "I might go out this weekend," which is less certain but still expressing a plan. "I'm thinking of starting a new hobby" is sharing a future possibility. There's also, "I hope to finish this project by Friday," which combines hope with intention. And "I'm looking forward to the weekend," which expresses anticipation. Then there's, "I've got plans to meet some friends tomorrow," which is straightforward. And "I'm considering a career change," which is sharing something bigger that's on your mind. Here's one that's more casual. "I'm gonna grab coffee after this," which is informal but friendly. There's also, I'm scheduled to have a meeting at 3, which is factual, and I need to get groceries later, which is sharing a responsibility you have coming up. Then there's, are you doing anything special this weekend, which is asking someone about their plans. One more that shows flexibility, I'm not sure what I'm doing next week, but I'll figure it out, which is honest. And I've been thinking about going back to school, which is sharing a longer-term aspiration. The interesting thing about future planning conversations is that they give you insight into what someone values and what they're excited about. If someone says, I'm really looking forward to learning guitar, you know music matters to them. That's valuable information for connection. Let's explore talking about past experiences. These are some of my favorite conversations because people's stories reveal so much about them. Instead of just saying, I did, try, I had the chance to, followed by what you did. I had the chance to travel to Japan last year, which sounds warm and grateful. Then there's, I used to go to that place all the time, which shares a past habit. And a while ago, I tried skydiving, which is sharing an experience. I remember trying sushi for the first time, is sharing a memory. There's also, I once visited that city, which is sharing past experience. And back then, I was really into photography, which is talking about an interest you used to have. Then there's, I had an incredible experience last summer, which is sharing something meaningful. And that reminds me of, which often leads into a story. Here's one that's reflective. Looking back, I realize how much I've learned, which is sharing wisdom from past experience. And I'll never forget the time when, which is introducing a particularly memorable experience. Then there's, years ago, I made the decision to, which is sharing a pivotal moment. And I remember this one time, which is often the beginning of a story. The beautiful thing about sharing past experiences is that it creates depth in conversations. You're not just talking about surface-level stuff. You're sharing pieces of your history, your growth, your challenges, your joys. When you do that, you give other people permission to do the same. You create an atmosphere where real conversation can happen, and that's when connections deepen. Now let's talk about conditional phrases, which are super useful when imagining situations or giving advice. If I were you is a classic. If I were you, I'd take that job opportunity. It's offering advice from a hypothetical position. Then there's if I had the chance, which is expressing what you do if circumstances were different. If I had the chance to work abroad, I'd definitely take it. There's also, if things were different, I would, which is more reflective. And I'd probably, which is expressing what you'd likely do in a situation. I'd probably choose the quieter option. Then there's, if I had more time, I would, which is expressing how you'd spend additional resources. And if circumstances allow, I will, which is more formal but still conditional. Here's one that's useful for advice giving. In that situation, I'd recommend, which is offering perspective. And if I'm being honest, I'd, which is combining honesty with conditionality. If I'm being honest, I'd take a break before continuing. Then there's, if things don't change, I might, which is expressing potential future action based on a condition. One more that's really useful, given that you're interested in, I'd suggest, which is taking someone's interests and offering conditional advice based on that. The beautiful thing about conditional phrases is that they let you explore possibilities without being prescriptive. You're not saying you should do this. You're saying, if I were in your position, I'd consider this, which is much more respectful of someone else's autonomy. Let's move into making polite suggestions. Throughout conversations, we often have ideas or recommendations. Offering these in a way that's collaborative rather than directive is important. How about we grab lunch together? Is collaborative and warm. There's also, why don't we try the new cafe, which is suggesting without demanding. Then there's maybe we could, which is tentative and friendly. Maybe we could take a walk and talk. Here's one that invites input. What if we, which opens up possibilities. And we could always, which is offering an option without insisting. We could always ask for clarification. Then there's have you thought about, which is inviting someone to consider something. And what do you think about, which is asking for their input. One more that's collaborative, let's, followed by a suggestion. Let's finish this tomorrow when we're fresh. And I was thinking maybe we could, which is sharing a thought while leaving room for discussion. Then there's would you be open to, which is asking if someone might be receptive to an idea. And I'd recommend trying, which is offering advice based on experience. The key with suggestions is framing them as possibilities rather than requirements. You're not saying, we have to do this. You're saying, what if we tried this? Or, I think this might work. That kind of framing keeps conversations collaborative and makes people feel respected. They're more likely to actually engage with your suggestion if they feel like they have agency in the decision. Let's talk about expressing agreement politely when you really do see eye to eye. When someone makes a point that resonates with you, there are so many ways to affirm that. That's absolutely right, is direct and affirming. There's also, I completely agree, which is clear. Then there's, you took the words right out of my mouth, which is saying the other person expressed exactly what you were thinking. It's warm and connects you. I couldn't agree more is emphatic agreement. And that's such a good point, which is acknowledging not just that you agree, but that it was well expressed. Then there's exactly what I was thinking, which is direct, and you nailed it, which is casual and affirming. Here's one that's more reflective. You've really hit on something important there, which acknowledges depth in what they said. Then there's the simple, yeah, for sure, which is casual agreement, and absolutely, which is emphatic and clear. One more that's thoughtful is, I've been feeling the same way actually, which not only agrees but also connects through shared feeling. And you really understand how I feel, which is appreciating that they've articulated something you were experiencing. The beautiful thing about agreeing well is that it validates people. It tells them their thoughts matter, their feelings are understood, and they're not alone in how they see things. That's really powerful. And when people feel genuinely heard and agreed with, they're more open to other perspectives too. It creates space for real dialogue rather than just everyone defending their own position. Sometimes, though, we don't fully agree, and we need to express that respectfully. I respect your opinion, but I think differently, is honest and respectful. There's also, that's one way to look at it, but I see it differently, which acknowledges their perspective while offering another. Then there's, I understand your point, however, which is the classic disagreement structure. I get where you're coming from, but I have a different view, is warm and thoughtful. And I hear you and I appreciate that perspective, though I think, which is validating before disagreeing. Then there's the more direct, I'm not sure I agree with that, which is honest. And that's interesting, but here's my take, which is introducing your perspective after acknowledging theirs. Here's one that's really effective. I respect you, and I respect your opinion, and I also see this differently, which takes out any implication that disagreement means lack of respect. And you raise a good point, and it also makes me think, which is building on their idea while introducing your own angle. Then there's, I hadn't thought of it that way, but I still think, which shows openness while maintaining your position. One more that's nuanced. In some ways, you're right, and in other ways, I think, which is finding middle ground. The key is that you're disagreeing with ideas, not attacking the person. You're respecting them as a human while being honest about your different perspective. That's the kind of communication that strengthens relationships rather than breaking them down. Let's explore expressing emotions and feelings. Real conversation involves emotions. We're not robots, we feel things. And expressing those feelings clearly makes us sound more human, more authentic, more genuine. Instead of just saying, I'm happy, try, I'm thrilled about this, which is more specific, or I'm feeling really good today, which connects emotion to the present moment. Then there's I'm over the moon, which is expressing extreme happiness. Over the moon is such a fun, old-fashioned expression. And I'm so excited, which is forward-looking and energetic. There's also I'm grateful, which is expressing deep appreciation, and I'm proud of myself, which is positive self-acknowledgement. Then there's the emotional opposite, I'm really disappointed, which is honest about a negative feeling. I've been feeling stressed lately, acknowledges struggle, and I'm frustrated with this situation, is being honest about how things are landing for you. There's also, I'm nervous about what's coming, which is vulnerability, and I'm lonely right now, which is being honest about emotional state. Then there's, I'm overwhelmed, which is a real feeling a lot of people experience. But there are also positive emotions beyond happiness. I'm content, which is a quiet, peaceful satisfaction. I'm inspired, which is feeling moved to action or create. And I'm at peace, which is a deep sense of okayness. Then there's I'm fulfilled, which is saying something in your life is meaningful. And I'm motivated, which is feeling energized towards something. The important thing is that expressing emotions, whether positive or challenging, is actually connecting. It's being real. It's inviting others to understand not just what you think, but how you feel. And that's where real human connection happens. That's where people actually understand each other. Now, let's talk about checking in on people. These are phrases we use to express that we care and that we notice them. Just checking in to see how you're doing is straightforward and caring. There's also, I've been thinking about you. How are things? Which is warm and personal. Then there's, is everything okay on your end? Which is asking if they're all right, which sometimes people need to be asked. I wanted to see how things were going for you, is expressing attention and care. And I've been wanting to catch up. How have you been? Which is missing someone and wanting to reconnect. Then there's, you seemed a little down earlier. Is everything all right? Which is noticing and caring enough to ask. And I hope things are getting better, which is expressing hope for positive change in their situation. Here's one that's more specific. I was thinking about what you mentioned last week. How did it go? Which shows you listened and you're following up. And can I do anything for you right now? Which is offering support. Then there's, I miss talking to you. Can we catch up soon? Which is expressing how much they matter to you. One more that's really tender. I just wanted you to know I'm here if you need anything, which is offering unconditional support. These phrases matter so much because they tell people they're not alone, they're not forgotten, and they're cared for. In our busy world, sometimes people just need to know that someone's thinking about them. That can change everything. Let's explore asking for opinions and feedback. Good communicators aren't just talking, they're also listening and valuing others' perspectives. I'd love to hear your thoughts, is inviting input. There's also, what do you think about this, which is direct. Then there's, I'd like your feedback, which is asking for specific input. And what's your take on it, which is asking for their perspective. Do you agree, is simple and direct. And how do you feel about that, which is asking for emotional as well as intellectual response. Then there's, I really value your opinion. What do you think? Which is combining appreciation with the ask. And would you be honest with me about? Which is asking for truthfulness, sometimes hard to come by. Here's one that shows respect. I know you know this better than I do. What's your perspective? Which is acknowledging someone's expertise. And I'm genuinely curious what you think, which shows authentic interest. Then there's, can you help me understand your position? Which is asking for clarity. And what would you recommend? Which is asking for guidance based on their experience. One more that's really beautiful. I trust your judgment. What do you think I should do? Which is both asking for advice and expressing faith in the other person's wisdom. The key with asking for opinions is being genuinely open to hearing perspectives that might be different from yours. If you ask someone what they think and then argue with them, they won't bother sharing in the future. But if you ask and truly listen, you're building a culture of respect and real dialogue. Let's talk about transitions and connecting ideas. Sometimes in conversation, we need to smoothly move from one thought to another. Instead of just jumping topics randomly, transition phrases help. Let me explain that a bit more, is giving yourself space to elaborate. There's also, here's what I mean, which is clarifying. Then there's for example or for instance, which is introducing a specific example. Let me give you a concrete example, is signaling that you're about to make something more concrete. And what I'm trying to say is, which is clarifying or adjusting. Then there's actually, let me back up, which is acknowledging that you need to restart or add context. And so to be clear, which is ensuring understanding. Here's one that's useful, to put it another way, which is rephrasing something. Anyway is transitioning to a new topic, and speaking of which is connecting one topic to another related one. Then there's by the way, which is introducing something slightly tangential but related. And now let me tell you, which is transitioning to something you're excited to share. One more that's useful, here's the thing, which is introducing something important or revelatory. These transitions might seem small, but they're actually really important for making conversation flow smoothly. They prevent jarring topic changes. They give people time to prepare for new ideas. They make you sound organized and thoughtful, and they make it easier for people to follow your thinking. All of that contributes to better communication. Let's talk about acknowledging and validating others' feelings. Sometimes people aren't looking for solutions. They're looking to be heard and understood. Phrases that acknowledge what they're experiencing are so valuable. I hear you and your feelings make sense is validating and empathetic. There's also, that sounds really difficult, which is naming the challenge. Then there's, I can only imagine how you must feel, which is showing empathy. What you're going through sounds tough is acknowledging struggle. And your feelings are completely valid, which is affirming. Then there's, I would feel the same way in your position, which is showing empathy through perspective taking. And that's really hard, and I'm sorry you're dealing with it, which is both validating and compassionate. Here's one that's honest. I don't fully understand, but I can see this matters a lot to you, which shows humility about what you don't know while still respecting their experience. And your pain matters, and I'm here for you, which is connecting emotion to action. Then there's, that's a lot to handle. Be gentle with yourself, which is offering wisdom alongside acknowledgement. One more that's powerful. You're doing better than you think you are, which often speaks to something people who are struggling need to hear. The key with validation is being genuine. People can tell when you're just going through the motions versus when you're really hearing them. Genuine understanding and empathy are rare gifts in a world where people are often just waiting for their turn to talk. When you truly listen and validate, you're offering something precious. Let's explore dealing with change and uncertainty. Life is constantly changing, and sometimes we need to express that we're not sure what's coming or how to feel about it. I'm not really sure what's going to happen, is honest. There's also, things are a bit uncertain right now, which is acknowledging that we're in a transitional space. Then there's, I'm trying to figure things out, which is saying you're in process. A lot is changing and I'm still processing it, is acknowledging both change and your emotional response. And I don't have all the answers, which is humble honesty. Then there's, I'm taking it one day at a time, which is expressing that you're not overwhelmed, even if things are uncertain. And I'm hopeful about what's coming, which is expressing optimism despite uncertainty. Here's one that's vulnerable. I'm scared about what's next, which is honest about fear. And I'm trying to trust the process, which is expressing faith even amid uncertainty. Then there's, things might look different soon, and I'm okay with that, which is expressing openness to change. And I'm open to whatever comes, which is releasing the need to control outcomes. One more that's really wise: I don't know what the future holds, but I'm ready for it, which combines uncertainty with readiness. The beautiful thing about expressing that you don't have all the answers is that it's real. None of us has all the answers. Life is uncertain. And when we acknowledge that together, it's oddly comforting. It connects us in shared humanity. Let's talk about offering reassurance. Sometimes people just need to be told that things will be okay, or at least that they're going to get through it. "You're going to be fine" is direct reassurance. There's also "this is temporary and you'll get through it," which is combining reassurance with realism. Then there's "I believe in you and your ability to handle this," which is combining confidence with support. "Things will work out" is expressing faith in positive outcomes. And "you're stronger than you think," which is affirming resilience. Then there's "this too shall pass," which is an old saying that reminds us that difficult things don't last forever. And "you're not alone in this," which is reassuring through connection. Here's one that's powerful: "Your efforts matter and they're making a difference," which reassures through validation of their work. "I'm confident you're going to figure this out," is expressing trust in their problem-solving ability. And "everything's going to be all right," which is a simple, powerful reassurance. Then there's "you've got people who believe in you," which is reassuring through connection to a community. And "I'm not worried about you because I know your strength," which is reassuring through faith in them. One more that's tender: "I'm here and I'm not going anywhere," which is offering presence and stability. The key with reassurance is that it needs to be genuine. If you reassure someone everything will be fine when objectively it might be hard, they won't believe you. But if you acknowledge that something is difficult and believe they can handle it, that's powerful reassurance. Let's explore showing interest and curiosity. Good conversations happen when people feel genuinely interested in. There are phrases that show this beautifully. "Tell me more about that" is inviting deeper conversation. There's also "I'm really curious about what you just said," which is expressing specific interest. Then there's "how did that make you feel," which is asking for emotional depth. "What happened next" is inviting them to continue their story. And "I want to understand this better. Can you walk me through it?" which is expressing commitment to understanding. Then there's "that's fascinating. Where did you learn that?" which is showing interest and asking for context. And "you seem really passionate about this. Tell me why," which is acknowledging their energy and inviting them to explain. Here's one that's open-ended: "What's been on your mind lately?" which invites them to share what matters to them. And "is there something you want to talk about?" which is explicitly offering space for them to share. Then there's "I noticed you seemed different. Everything okay?" which is showing that you pay attention. And "I'd love to hear more about your experience," which is inviting them to share their perspective. One more that shows real interest: "What would that look like to you?" which is trying to understand their specific vision or experience. The beautiful thing about genuine interest is that it's reciprocal. When you show real interest in people, they tend to show interest in you. Curiosity and genuine listening are gifts we give to each other that deepen connection. Let's talk about expressing gratitude in deeper ways. Beyond just "thank you," there are so many ways to express that something someone did genuinely mattered to you. "I'm grateful for you" is personal and deep. There's also "you've made such a difference in my life," which is expressing impact. Then there's "I appreciate your patience with me," which is specific gratitude. "I wouldn't be where I am without you" is expressing how much their presence or help mattered. And "you always come through for me," which is appreciating reliability and loyalty. Then there's "I'm thankful for how you listen without judgment," which is gratitude for a specific quality. And "you make the world better just by being in it," which is expressing deep appreciation for who they are. Here's one that's emotional: I needed someone like you, and here you are, which is expressing how their presence met a need. And you have no idea how much this means to me, which is expressing depth of appreciation. Then there's I'm blessed to have you in my life, which is spiritual gratitude. And thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself, which is thanking them for support during a difficult time. One more that's beautiful, I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm grateful for you, which combines seeing, appreciating, and gratitude. The key with deeper gratitude is being specific about what you're grateful for and how it impacted you. Thank you for believing in me hits differently than just thank you because the person knows specifically what you're grateful for. That specificity makes gratitude more powerful and more memorable. All right, as we're wrapping up this episode, I want to revisit why these everyday phrases matter so much. It's easy to think that fluency is about using complicated grammar or fancy vocabulary, but the truth is, fluency is about being able to communicate naturally and effectively. And these phrases, the ones we've explored today, they're the foundation of that natural, effective communication. When you master these phrases, something shifts. You stop translating in your head. You stop desperately searching for the right words. Instead, you respond, you participate, you connect. And that's the real goal of language learning. Not just to communicate information, but to truly connect with other humans. These phrases are the vehicle for that connection. I also want to say something important. Learning a language is not a destination you reach and then you're done. It's an ongoing journey. Even native speakers are constantly learning new phrases, new ways of expressing themselves, new nuances in communication. So be patient with yourself. Celebrate the progress you're making. Every time you use one of these phrases naturally in conversation, you're growing. And here's something I've learned. Consistency matters more than intensity. You're better off practicing these phrases a little bit every single day than cramming them all at once and then forgetting about them. So pick 1 or 2 phrases from today's episode and commit to using them tomorrow. Then tomorrow, add another. Build your practice gradually, and these phrases will become part of your natural speech pattern. Also, remember that using these phrases is not just about English. It's about treating people with respect and kindness. When you say, I really appreciate that, instead of just thanks, you're telling someone their actions matter. When you ask, could you say that again, please? Instead of just saying, what? You're showing respect for the other person's effort. When you phrase requests politely, you're acknowledging the other person's autonomy. Language is one of the most powerful tools we have for human connection, and the way we use it matters. So as you incorporate these phrases into your daily English, do it with the intention of using them to build bridges with people, not just to sound fancy or correct. That intention is what transforms English learning from a technical skill into an art form of human connection. I also want to acknowledge that English is a living, changing language. The phrases that work today might evolve tomorrow. New phrases emerge all the time, especially on the internet and in casual speech. So as you learn these 75 phrases, also stay curious. Pay attention to how native speakers communicate. Notice the phrases you hear in movies, in podcasts, in real conversations. Let your language learning be a journey of discovery, not just memorization. And finally, I want to say that you're doing amazing work by dedicating this time to improving your English. It's not always easy. There are days when it feels frustrating or overwhelming. But the fact that you're here, listening to this podcast, engaging with this content shows commitment. And that commitment is what creates change. So celebrate yourself for that. You deserve it. As we wrap up this episode, I want to give you a homework assignment. For the next week, I want you to pick 3 phrases from today that really resonated with you, and I want you to consciously use them in your daily conversations. Write them down if that helps. Practice them out loud. Try them in real situations. Notice how they feel in your mouth, in your mind, in your interaction with other people. Then come back next week and let me know how it goes. If you're listening to this on a podcast app, leave a review and tell me which phrases have been most helpful for you. I read every single review, and your feedback genuinely helps me create better content for you. And if you know someone who's working on their English, please share this episode with them. Your recommendation means the world to them and to me. Before I go, I want to remind you that there are so many ways to continue your English learning journey. You can follow along with this podcast every week. You can practice these phrases with friends or language exchange partners. You can watch movies or shows in English and notice the phrases people use. You can keep a journal where you write using some of these phrases. There are so many ways to keep growing, and all of them are valuable. I'm genuinely proud of you for investing in yourself by learning English. This skill is going to open doors for you in ways you might not even expect yet. Career opportunities, friendships, connections with people from all over the world, the ability to access information and entertainment in its original language. These are all possibilities that open up as you improve your English. So here's what I want you to do right now. Take a moment, whether it's right after this episode or later today, and pick one phrase that you're going to use with the very next person you interact with. Maybe it's, "How's your day going?" to a colleague. Maybe it's, "I really appreciate you," to someone you're grateful for. Maybe it's, "Could you repeat that, please?" if you don't catch something. Just pick one and use it consciously. Notice how the other person responds. Notice how it feels. And then tomorrow, do it again with a different phrase. This is how these phrases move from something you're learning to something that's part of who you are as an English speaker. It's incremental, it's consistent, and it's absolutely transformative. I also want to say that if you've been learning English for a while and you feel like you're not progressing as fast as you'd like, remember that progress isn't always linear. Sometimes you'll have breakthroughs. Sometimes you'll plateau. Both are normal. Both are part of the journey. What matters is that you keep going. You keep practicing. You keep engaging with the language and with people. That's what creates change over time. And if you're just starting your English learning journey and some of this felt overwhelming, remember that you don't have to learn all 75 phrases at once. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to try. Every mistake you make is actually a learning opportunity. Every time you're unsure and push through that uncertainty, you're building confidence. That's how language learning actually works. You know, I think about my own English learning journey, and I remember feeling so overwhelmed when I first started. There were so many phrases, so many grammar rules, so many ways to say the same thing, and I felt like I'd never get it. But then I realized that the native speakers around me weren't using all the complex things I was studying. They were using simple, everyday phrases, exactly like the ones we've explored today. Once I shifted my focus to learning and using these everyday phrases, everything changed. My confidence went up, my actual ability to communicate improved dramatically, and I realized that mastery of everyday English is actually more powerful than mastery of complicated English, because everyday English is how real people actually talk. That's the English that builds connections and gets things done. So I hope that this episode has been helpful for you. I hope you found phrases that resonate with you and that you're excited to use. I hope you're feeling more confident about your English, and I hope that you'll come back next week for more practical, useful English learning content. Because this is what we do on the Everyday English Podcast. We make English learning practical, relatable, and actually useful for your daily life. Before I sign off, I want to say thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode. Thank you for dedicating time to improving your English. Thank you for being part of this community of language learners who are committed to growth and connection. It means so much to me, and it matters more than you might think. All right, I'm going to leave you with this thought. The next time you're in a conversation and you use one of the phrases we've learned, pay attention to how it lands. Pay attention to how the other person responds. And remember that language is not just about conveying information, it's about showing up as a human being who cares about connection. It's about being respectful, being genuine, being present with the people you're talking to. And that, my friends, is what makes English, or any language, beautiful. It's not the grammar, it's not the vocabulary, it's the intention behind the words. It's the care you put into your communication. So, as you continue your English journey, never lose sight of that. Never let the technical aspects of learning a language overshadow the human aspect of it. I want to give a special thanks to everyone who's been listening to this podcast regularly. Your support keeps me motivated to create better content. Your questions and feedback help me understand what you need. Your progress inspires me. Seriously, it does. Knowing that I'm helping people like you grow in confidence and ability with English is one of the most rewarding things I do. So here's my challenge to you this week. Use at least 3 phrases from today. Practice them out loud. Use them in real conversations. Notice how they feel. Come back next week and tell me how it went. And most importantly, be kind to yourself as you're learning. You're doing great. You really are. All right, my friends, that's going to wrap up our episode today. This has been an incredible deep dive into the everyday phrases that make English speakers sound natural and fluent. We've covered greetings and small talk, making and confirming plans, expressing opinions and emotions, asking for help and offering support, dealing with disagreement gracefully, and so much more. By now, you should feel like you have a toolkit of useful phrases that you can start incorporating into your daily conversations. Remember, the real magic of language learning happens when you take what you learn and actually use it. So don't just listen to this episode and move on. Actually practice these phrases. Use them with people. Notice what feels natural and what doesn't. Build your confidence gradually and celebrate your progress along the way. I'm going to be back here next week with another episode of the Everyday English Podcast. We're going to continue exploring the practical, real-world English that's going to make you a more confident and fluent speaker. So make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and join me for that next episode. You won't want to miss it. Until then, keep practicing, keep learning, keep growing, and most importantly, keep connecting with people in English. That's the goal. That's the beautiful thing about learning a language. You're not just learning words and grammar. You're opening up possibilities for human connection, and that's something special. Thank you again for spending time with me today. Thank you for your commitment to improving your English, and thank you for being part of the Everyday English community. It's an honor to learn alongside you. Take care of yourself, practice these phrases, and I'll see you in the next episode.